Welcome to another episode of the Fanzone podcast, your home for all things Bolton Wanderers, up the Trotters, the Northwest's #1 podcast.
Good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Fanzone podcast. Tonight, of course, is the preview show sponsored by Loving My Socials. Very excited to have a special guest with us tonight. Of course, you're joined by myself and Ben. Jon Beer has also joined us. Jon, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me, gents. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure's all ours. Good evening, Ben. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Good. Excited for Saturday. Get back on track
looking forward to getting back on track, no doubt. Fingers crossed, anyway. Good evening, Chris. Good evening, Sushi. Good evening, Lee. Good to have you all here. Obviously, feel free to get your comments in the chat. I'll be more than happy to bring them up on screen and delve into them. Good evening to the 16 people watching across the other platforms as well, of course, X and Facebook and wherever else you're listening. Or if you're listening back as well on audio, thank you very much for doing that. Be sure to like and leave us a review and all that type of good stuff as well. It goes a long way to help us and, of course, help get in the ears of other Bolton Wanderers fans. Jon, I am a little bit interested in your incomings and outgoings, I'll be honest. I had a quick check before we went live, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've had 10 incoming and around 14 outgoing, including, of course, permanents, releases and loans. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, we just signed another player today on loan from Leicester, so that makes it 11. Amani Richards, who is an exciting winger. I think we had an injury, and I think you're going to touch on this later, but we had an injury to a pretty influential player of ours, Yannick Wildschut, in pre-season. He was probably our best player in pre-season and unfortunately ruptured his ACL on the last pre-season game, so he's out for the 9 months of the season, which is disappointing. But yeah, that's the only one you're missing from your list. But yeah, you're right. I think 11 incomings, which, you know, it sounds like a lot, but when you've got 14 outgoings, it's not really too much of a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I assume, and one should never really assume, but I guess that's impacted on results. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to be realistic about Exeter City's chances in League One. I think it's a real privilege for us to be in this division in the first place. Obviously, a fan-owned club, not a massive budget. A lot of the players that we bring in are either going to be players that have got something to prove or sort of old experienced heads that are looking to sort of, you know, maybe see out there the remaining end of their years in football. Maybe, for example, like Josh McGuinness, who a lot of people see as that kind of player. But I mean, I don't think the amount of players that have come in has impacted our start. I think if you look at our first 7 games, I think we play sort of the predicted top 6, which is a pretty rough running. Or run-ins, should I say. So, yeah, I don't think the incomings have necessarily played a part in our form. I think more just the opponents themselves. I think we picked up a really positive result against Rotherham on the opening day of the season. And then since then, maybe been a little bit disappointing. But no, I think, in my opinion, I think a lot of City fans won't agree with me, but we've looked really positive in the games. I don't think we should have lost at Northampton and we should have got at least a point from the Peterborough game. So there's definitely positives for us to take. But, yeah, on paper, it doesn't look like the most fantastic start to the season.
Yeah, I was obviously mainly referring to, I guess, the gelling of players, and maybe the results haven't kind of gone your way, I guess. Obviously, we're very close to the end of the transfer window. I do know that you've brought in quite a few frees. I think they've all been frees from what I can see. That obviously extends beyond tomorrow's window. But are you expecting any business ahead of our game on Saturday?
I can't imagine there'll be any more. I think Gary was hinting at sort of 1 or 2 at the start of the week. We've got one in today. I think the only one that could become a fee is John Lee Yefeko, who we signed from Rangers. He's a loan with an option to buy. So if he sort of performs well at the end of the season, we'll probably pay a fee for him. But other than that, yeah, you're right. Frees and loans, which is, again, sort of a very typical Exeter City way to be. There's not a lot of money flying around our club, so we've got to make the most of what we have. And for example, you know, Ryan Woods, who I think is a really good player at this level, we were able to attract because of how much he enjoyed his loan with us last season. He wasn't loving football again. Wasn't loving football at Hull. We got him loving football again here, and he sort of felt, right, this is the place I want to come and play football, regardless of the wage and that kind of thing. So that's the kind of mentality. Well, not mentality. I guess that's just the way it's always been at Exeter City. We've not got the money of the big dogs in this division, and that's how we sort of compete.
Yeah, just quickly touching upon what is probably the best way to operate as a club of Exeter's stature in this type of division. Obviously, you've had quite a good number of academy graduates coming through in the last few years. No more so than, of course, our Euros hero, I guess, Ollie Watkins. Any upcoming players that maybe not going to hit the heights this season, but maybe long term? Have you got any high expectations on some of them type of players?
Yeah, I think on Saturday you might see a chap called Pedro Borges on the bench for us. Portuguese lad, really, really talented, a bit hot-headed, fiery. Isn't always going to make the right decision. But, I mean, if anyone wants to see an assist he made, go watch his assist that he did for us against Port Vale at the end of last season. It's something, honestly, if Messi did it, you'd be talking about it for years to come. It was incredible. But just sort of really inconsistent. I think he's one to look out for. Obviously not going to be an England international, but we've also got a young lad called Jake Richards who has been eyed up by every Premier League team you can think of and is a really exciting prospect. I think he's out injured for a few months, but if Bolton fans want to keep an eye on him, because I think he's one that really could go to the very top like Ollie Watkins.
Good. I mean, you've got a hell of a catchment area. I got to admit, John, haven't you? Really, it shouldn't really be a surprise that you're producing a few talented players. I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were really ahead of the curve, which helped us. There's an amazing gentleman at our football club called Julian Tagg, who's quite well known within the football space, especially lower league football. I think he's the vice chair of League One, actually. But he was sort of ahead of the curve 25 years ago and set up our academy really strong and sort of built our foundations on that. So I think we're starting to reap the rewards of that. There's a few clubs in and around us, like Bristol City and Plymouth, our neighbours down the road. But, that we are all quite far apart. I think we're all an hour but like apart from each other. So yeah, we've got a pretty big catchment area, but you've still got to produce those players. You've still got to find them. So although there is a big catchment area, I think a lot of credit needs to go to the academy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's good to always get a bit of an insight into transfer dealings and obviously the way that your club's operating, because like I said before we went live, we really want to try and bridge that connection between the clubs in this division, because outside of the Premier League, of course, your understanding of other clubs isn't as probably what you would hope. So, yeah, I always personally think it's really good to get a bit of a feel for, what your plans are, really. We've touched upon the season so far already, but we'll do a little bit more of a deep dive, as they say these days. Mix it up a little bit for you. For any Exeter fans that might be listening to this, we'll give you a bit of an insight, John, into how we've been going on so far this season. Ben, are you all right to hit the road with this one and give John and the other Exeter fans a bit of an insight into that?
Of course, yeah. So we started away late in Orient. We got a decent 2-1 win away there. It wasn't vintage Bolton. It was kind of a dig in and finish your chances. Help keeper helps you get 3 points at the end, and yeah, we walk away. And we had Wrexham at home the following week on Sky, and big crowd, but not exactly the amazing game people were hoping. I mean, it's funny on the preview. I think me, Ben, and Tim all said the goals, and of course, what happened? It was 0-0. And I think we probably edged it in chances. Didn't do a great deal, but it's one of them you walk away with a point thinking, I think.
One of the benefits or one of the disadvantages of doing podcasts live is internet connections, and as you can probably tell, Ben's is breaking up somewhat. So I took the decision to mute him a second, and hopefully he catches up pretty soon. But I do apologise about that, Ben. You can shout at me after the podcast if you like. Whilst we wait for Ben to clear up a little bit, John, can you want to kind of just delve into you guys and how you guys have been performing so far this season, please?
Yeah, so we started the season with a 1-0 win against Rotherham at home, which we thought was going to be the start of something good again. I think we were top at the end of August last season, so we sort of had a good start to last season as well, but sort of dropped off a little bit. We drew with Walsall in the League Cup, obviously, but lost on penalties, so that obviously goes down as a loss. And then we had a really tough couple of games. I think we played Peterborough. We had Northampton away, which is never an easy place to go. Lost 2-1 there. The second goal was unfortunately offside, but still given. So maybe we've probably deserved the point there. But the performance in the second half, probably not good enough from City. And I think that's been the story of our season so far. Started really well first half, probably been the better side in every game in the first half. Dropped off a little bit in the second. I think we were lucky to hold on at Rotherham for the sort of remaining 20 minutes after we scored or so. And then at Northampton, again, second half wasn't good enough. And Peterborough, again, probably after our goal, which was, 12 minutes in or whatever it was, not good enough again. So we seem to start games really brightly, but unfortunately seem to drop off. But, as I said to you guys, or I said a minute ago, our run doesn't get any easier. We've got yourselves, Birmingham, which has now been postponed, Blackpool, Stevenage, Wigan. So, it's not an easy running, but I guess no game's easy in League One.
No, I think when you read games out, and obviously the old saying, on paper and all that type of stuff, they always look more difficult than they actually are. I think you often, especially when you're at home, you're able to kind of turn teams over and give them a good game as well. No more so than the first game of the season against Rotherham. Obviously, a 1-0 victory against them. Obviously, a lot of Bolton fans will be interested, I would imagine, about Rotherham, given the fact that they're likely to be in and around us come the end of the season. Can you give us a bit of an insight into them and how they performed against you guys, and what your thoughts are following that cracking result for Exeter?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I was really quite disappointed by what Rotherham brought. Obviously, they've got fantastic names when you look at them on paper. I think they started with Jordan Hugill, Johnson Clark-Harris and Hungbo up front, which is, is a right front three for League One. And I just remember thinking, oh dear, we could be in for a long day here. But they were really direct, really not quick on the counter when they did win the ball back. Sort of a lot of wasted passes. And, that could have been what I thought on the day. It was, just start of the season, haven't got running. That's all right. They'll pick up again. But they haven't really done all right in the other two games either. So really disappointed with what Rotherham bought, especially with the budget they have. I mean, they had one of our former strikers, Sam Nombe, sat on the bench, who I think they paid near enough £1 million for. So, to have £1 million player on the bench in League One's not too bad, is it? But yeah, I was really disappointed with the way that Rotherham played and the way that those players that you would expect on paper to be top League One players performed that day.
Yeah, and another team, of course, that we expect to be in and around the top of the division this season, of course, Peterborough. You guys got you were defeated 2-1, should I say, by Peterborough a few weeks back. I'm looking at that game statistically, and you were well in the game. Can you maybe delve into that game a little bit for us as well, and give us an insight into Peterborough and what your thoughts are on them?
Peterborough were much better than the Rotherham side. I saw much more possession based. I think everyone expects that with Peterborough, but really good on the counter. I think they were really clever. They let us have a lot of the ball, allowed us to make our own mistakes, and then sort of tried to catch us on the break. I mean, they had some fantastic players playing. I mean, Mothersville and Ricky J. Jones were superb in that game. Really, really good. They were just lightning. I think we've got a lad called Pierce Sweeney at the back, fantastic player, but he's not quick at all. So Ricky J. Jones was just running past him like it was. He didn't get out of first gear. It was frightening how quick he was. But yeah, they were much better than the Peterborough side. And like you said, I think a lot of people were already expecting Peterborough to be a fantastic side, and obviously Darren Ferguson, who's been there many times, knows how to get them promoted out of this division, will bring that to them. So yeah, they'll be definitely ones to look out for, but maybe Rotherham are going to be one of those teams that don't quite perform. But yeah, I mean, there's some really big names in that Peterborough side. I mean, Jed Steer in goal, who got promoted to the Premier League not too many seasons ago. So yeah, some really good players. Obviously a much weakened Peterborough side. They were much better last season. They obviously lost Ronnie Edwards and obviously Mason Clark. I always get them confused with Clark Harris and Ephraim Mason Clark. But yeah, they obviously lost him as well. So they lost some really big players, but obviously a lot of attacking threat in there. And we did save a penalty. So it could have been 3-1 very easily.
Yeah, in terms of statistics, I must admit, when I was reading the stats earlier, I'd noticed that you guys had you didn't really, like you touched upon already, you had a lot of the ball, but also your passing accuracy and general amount of passes as well were pretty high. Does that indicate to us that you guys like to play a possession-based style? Is that fair to say that, John?
Yeah, I think any Bolton fans that would have seen the 7-0 drubbing of us last season really didn't get a fair reflection of us. I think we had something stupid like 6 or 7 first-team players out injured. We played our centre-back up front, if anyone remembers. Czech Diabate played up front that day, so it was a pretty rough day. I was there. unfortunately. So I think you'll see a much changed side. I think we tried to play football, but I mean, you guys, I think it was a mixture of us being particularly rubbish on that day and you guys being on top. I think every time you attacked, I thought you were going to score. So yeah, I thought we were lucky to keep it down to 7, to be honest. But yeah, I think it will be a much changed City side, a much more fluid, much more confident. I think we were in the middle of a really big rut at that point. I think we were 7 games into or 7 or 8 games into a 13 game and that streak without a win. So yeah, I think if you're expecting anything like last season, fingers crossed, touch wood, that you'll be surprised.
Yeah, well, I didn't have the chance to go to that game. Actually, I was in Belgium myself last year, so maybe I was, maybe it was well, looking forward to that game again. Obviously on Saturday after missing last year's. Ben, I think you were, I think your internet sorted itself out now, mate, from what I can see. So you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, I'll see how long it lasts. It's funny, isn't it? I think Exeter had a really good start to last season, and then after we beat you 7-0, I think basically everyone just assumed Caldwell was going to go at some point, and how we turned it around, and you had a really good into last season. How is the general feel on Caldwell now? He's just signed a new contract, hasn't he? I'm pretty sure. So I'm imagining, I mean, compared to this time last year, it's pretty high.
Yeah, I think I need to be careful with what I say in regards to the Caldwell situation, because I'm a really big Caldwell in, if you like. I don't like that phrase in football at all, but I'm very much pro Gary Caldwell, if you like. I've never, and I'm only young, I'm only 22, but I've been watching City since I was 5 years old. And in all that time, we've had 3 managers, maybe 4 if you count our interim manager. I've never come across a manager who quite gets our football club like Gary does. He is incredibly fond of our model. He understands that there's limitations that come with it, but enjoys the challenge, thinks the club can still progress despite that. We've had managers in the past that maybe have thought this is our cap, this is as far as we can go. There seems to be a real belief with Gary that we can actually go on to the next level and actually achieve something more, to achieve some history with the football club. I think our highest ever finished is 8th in League One. So I think there's a real sense of belief in himself that he can do that. I think there's some fans that are still not entirely sort of flattered by the way he plays. I think a lot of people are really sort of dismissive of him, I think unfairly. But I'm such a big fan and so fond of him. And, you know, I think any Exeter City fan that's expecting instant success is probably not in supporting the right team, to be honest, because it's always been a patient game for us. We were in League Two for 10 years, so that says all you need to know. But no, I think the tide is slowly turning. I think most of the people are sort of willing to get behind him, but you know, whenever something like that really happens, and it is, you know, I think it was 100 days without a win. It's a long time to go without a win. I think only 1 or 2 points within that. I think I can understand why people were frustrated with him, but for me, he's won people back over, and a big reason as to why we were so successful in the second part of that season was because of Ryan Woods. His loan signing was instrumental. I think we only lost twice from him coming in to the end of the season. So no, I think he did really well. He saved himself with the signings he brought in January, and I think he won a lot of people back again.
Yeah, I think that segues well into a question that Chris Dawson has asked in the chat. And anybody else who wants to ask any questions, feel free to do so. Chris is a fellow co-host of the Fanzone podcast. He's asked a question similar to what Ben said, really. Has the anti-Caldwell agenda died off now? Seems to be a lot of discontent last season. Is that still the same, or has that changed?
Yeah, I think the majority are back on side. I think you'll always get the ones who are sort of going to die on their sword and then waiting for him to fail, and then when he does fail, we'll go, brilliant, I was right from the beginning, which, you know, I guess is an attitude you could take in football. For me, it's a bizarre one because I think you should always support your team no matter what. It's not nice to lose 7-0. It's not nice to lose at any point. But if you can't see as a football fan how genuine he is, how much he's trying, how good the signings have been under, and considering the budget, we've picked up some real gems from non-league. I think even if you listen to the interview that Steve Evans gave, the Rotherham manager, before our game with them, he was saying that we'd beaten them to some of their targets. This is a team with a budget maybe 6 or 7 times bigger than us. And Gary has that allure and has that selling factor and, you know, the ability to attract players here and go, look, you can go to Rotherham, but you'll be on the bench or you won't play. Come play for us. Come show what you can do and try and make the step up again. So, look, I think if you just look at results and win percentage and how we were last season, I guess it is easy to not like him. But if you look at the actual stats, we beat our points tally from the season before, finished higher than the season before. We were really successful in that second part of the season, despite being in what we called a sort of rebuild era. We lost 4 or 5 academy players the season before. Josh Kidd, Jack Sparks, Archie Collins. We'd lost a lot of players, and we lost Sam Nombe, our top goal scorer, with about 2 weeks left of the window. So we were in a rebuild phase, and I think he did really well. So I think, yes, in answer to Chris's question, there is a lot of people that have been won back over by Gary.
Good to hear. He seems like a likable bloke as well, doesn't he? So hopefully he'll have a good career, and obviously, continue to make progress with you guys. I reckon we delve into the injury situation, because those are building up again, aren't they?
Our injuries have been. Sorry, go on, Chris.
No, go on, mate. You go first.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I don't know what it is at Exeter City, but we just seem to be cursed every season. I don't know if any of. I obviously don't keep track on every team's injuries, but for us, it seems like every season at the start, we've got 4 or 5 players out injured. We've got obviously Dimitri Mitchell, who was a long-term one from last season, who's still quite not back, but a really key figure in our squad, probably our brightest attacking spark, to be honest. Especially out wide. Obviously, Yannick Wildschut, who was our best player in pre-season, one of our better players towards the end of last season, 9 months out with an ACL, probably going to, there's a chance that he won't play football again given his age. And then we've obviously got Sonny Cox, our young striker, who last season at one point was our only number 9 injured. Caleb Watts, who scored our opening goal of this season, looked really bright, out injured. So it's just so frustrating to see all these injuries come in. But yeah, it's really frustrating.
Yeah, well, you're not on your own. Is he Ben?
It feels like we've been cursed for the past sort of year or so. I don't know. I feel like every club seems to say that now, because I don't know. Maybe it's just the number of games we play these days. And I mean, it felt like us, Derby, and Portsmouth last season, the top 3 were all saying, "Look, we've got half our team out." I don't know how we were still competing. But it's funny you should say that, Cole, because I was looking at my list from last time I did the preview, and I ended up crossing out 4 names. I think 3 of them were kind of knocks in Farino, Charles, and Southwood, who have since come back, and they all started in midweek, didn't they? Obviously, Charles has started every league game, so he came back earlier than expected. And Dempsey, who's managed to find his way back into the fans' favourite team, it seems like, judging from what people were saying after the other night. He had a good game, and seen quite a few put him in their starting 11. But there was Vic, who Adebayo, who was missing on Tuesday night, wasn't he? And Everett did say he picked up a knock. Hopefully that doesn't turn into anything more serious. Obviously, still got Gethin Jones out, who had surgery in pre-season. Not sure the time frame on that. Obviously, Carlos Mendes Gomez, we've said about 50 times now. And unfortunately, Claudio Lolas, who, when you talk about injury curses, we brought him in at the start of pre-season, basically played every pre-season game, and then started on the bench for the first game, and after 5 minutes got clattered and had to stay on the pitch because he used all our subs, kind of hobbled around, and then has been ruled out for about, I don't know, 10 plus weeks, I think it is. So,
no, I think it's less than that. Then we've had a bit of good news. Yeah, we've had a bit of good news today on Lolas. I think it's looking more like 4. Originally, they thought that he might have to have surgery, but it's looking like 4 weeks out, which is still a decent amount of time in it. But yeah, better news on that front. That is very hot off the press, as you might say, so to speak. So there's currently 100 people watching across the platform. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. Greatly appreciate that. Things are looking up, I guess, to an extent on the injury front, aren't they, Ben? But let's help out the Exeter fans who might be listening to this, who might fancy a drink on the travels. I think around 400 or 500 of you coming up to the Reebok on Saturday. John, is that right?
Yeah, I think when I checked this morning, there was sort of 406 tickets sold, I think. So obviously, if you take into account sort of maybe 25, 50 on the day, it might be close to 500, which would be a really good following for us, really.
That's it. Yeah, good to hear. So yeah, let's tell them where they can have a pint. Now, for the Exeter fans coming to the Tough Sheet Community Stadium, I have to be very careful, John. I still say the Reebok, and I think I always will do, but let's give it its proper name, Tough Sheet Community Stadium. We do have a fan zone area, but unfortunately, it is only for home fans, and you do have to show your tickets upon arrival at the gate, so they won't let you into that area. There's several potential drinking locations on the retail park, which generally speaking, I think you'll be all right, providing that you're not all Stone Island up looking for trouble. Colours hidden and all that type of malarkey. I think you should be all right on that front. But there are a few designated pubs scattered across the town. The main one, of course, is the Beehive, which is on top of Chorley New Road, near the roundabouts if you've been to the stadium before. About 10-15 minute walk, I'd say, from the grounds. There's a couple of other pubs as well. Blunderlands, which is on Chorley Old Road, which tends to accept away fans. A little bit of a trek. It's probably only good if you've got a designated driver, that one. And same goes for the pubs in Bolton Town Centre. The Dragonfly being one that I understand takes away fans. That's probably good if you're coming on the train and you've got a bit of spare time. But yeah, there's a few locations you can go for a pint. I think the main one is obviously the Beehive. I suspect that the majority of your fans will head to. Plenty of places for food for those who like a bite to eat on an away day. Unsurprisingly, looking at me, that's someone like myself. But yeah, that's a bit of a load on the pub watch, and I reckon we should have a little bit of a think about what score's going to be. Big thanks as well to Loving My Socials, the headline sponsor of the preview show. Be sure, if you wish to learn a little bit more information about Loving My Socials and the great stuff that Leanne does, head over to our website, fanzonepod.co.uk/Loving My Socials, or of course head over to Loving My Socials social media pages. Leanne does some great work, a lot of work with businesses, creating social content and whatnot. So if you're after looking at some that kind of stuff, if you own your own business or know somebody that does, be sure to give Leanne a shout. John, we'll start with the guests, but also everybody in the chat as well. Throw your predictions, and I'll make sure that I put them live on the screen. Please try and ignore the 7-0 from last season and give us your prediction on Saturday's game.
I would really, really happily take a point. I'm not going to lie. I would be absolutely buzzing if we came up there and got a point. So I'll predict what I want, and I'll go for 1-1.
Yeah, I think that's what we usually do. We don't really do proper predictions. We always just say Bolton are going to win, aren't we? So it's more predict what you want to happen. Oh, God, I hope not you. Yeah, I think it's going to be. It's an important game for us. It's more important than it probably usually would be. We have a really, really good record over since we've been in League One over sort of the, no offense, the mid to lower table teams.
Yeah.
So I think on a usual basis we kind of rock up and assume we're going to win this. But there's a little bit of pressure mounting, probably 10-15% more pressure than usual, even though you probably wouldn't think so looking at Twitter. Yeah, obviously
it's never the yardstick that though, Ben, is it? You should never use
not.
Twitter
It's not
as a yardstick of a fan base. Who you are as a football club.
Yeah, you're right. But obviously after back-to-back games we've not scored in the league now. It's probably a while since that's happened. And obviously the 2-0 loss at Charlton last time out was obviously a little bit of frustration that would need to be kicked out, really. I would imagine, there was a really, really good performance albeit in the Cup with a weakened side against Shrewsbury. A really dominant performance, which is us at our best, really. So hopefully that is the start of things to come. And I'm going to go 3-0. Yeah, I would say, as you said, though, I would expect a closer game, obviously, last year. I don't think you could come in worse circumstances. And the reverse fixture was one of the most bizarre games I've ever watched. It was as you said, for a few times for your games this season, we were amazing in the first half and then crumbled, and you were all over us in that second half. And we managed to scrape a point, which would have been bizarre to say at half time. So yeah, I'm expecting a lot tougher ask. But yeah, I'm going to go 3-0.
I'm going to say something that might be considered a bit of a stupid thing to say, especially when you consider not many years ago, Bolton v Arsenal was a regular fixture in the football calendar. But I feel that you may very well see a different animal over these next few weeks and beyond, simply due to the fact that we play Arsenal in the Carabao Cup. I do feel that is not necessarily that they need it, but I do feel that they're going to want to do everything they can to show that they can play in that game, the Bolton players, because I think they're going to want to do for obvious reasons. So I think we're going to go on a bit of a run. Me having seen us draw them Gunners yesterday. Shouldn't really be an incentive being a Bolton Wanderers Football Club player, in my opinion, but that's a story for another day, I guess.
Not excited, are you, Colin?
Sorry?
Can't be excited, can you?
No. I think we should realise who we support sometimes and whatever. Anyway, that's a different thing. I do think we're going to go on a bit of a run. I do think it'll start on Saturday, and I think we'll get somewhat of a comfortable 2-0 victory, if that's even a thing, 2-0, because it can often be a tricky scoreline, can't it? But yeah, that's my prediction for Saturday. Massive thank you to every single one of you in the chat tonight. Massive thank you, of course, to Jon. Greatly appreciate that. Jon, can you give us a bit of an insight into the stuff that you do and where Wanderers fans can find you? Because I know you're pretty active in the old football world, aren't you?
Yeah, so I do a podcast called You Don't Know What You're Doing. Some people might have known it as My New Football Club before, with comedian David L from Afterlife and musician Alfie Indra, who people might have heard of. I do a little bit of work for BBC, I do a little bit of work for Sky, but my main sort of output is through the pod. So if you want to go and give that a listen, it's not a very serious take on football. It's definitely the opposite. So if you want to have a little bit of a laugh about football, then that's your place to go. But no, thank you very much for having me, gents.
Been our pleasure. You've been very popular. A few people are saying good luck for the season. Of course, Chris has said brilliant guests, good insight and all that type of stuff. So yeah, really appreciate your time, of course, Jon. We tried to keep it within half an hour, just to talk a little bit. But thank you to the 133 people that have watched tonight's episode. Yeah, let's go to the Tough Sheet Community Stadium on Saturday. Positive, look forward to it, get behind the lads, and hopefully we'll get 3 points. Have a good evening, everybody. See you all soon.